Welcome to the second part of a three-part presentation on the replacement of a Skylight on a Safari 2000 Continental. The picture you can see here is after the pylon was cut away to match the outline for the Skylight. And you can see one of the fails in this is I used a jigsaw to do this and didn't realize that cable trays had been molded into the roof of the coach, and I neatly zipped through a whole bunch of wires here. It wasn't a major problem because I can put them back together quickly enough, but a smarter way to do this would have been to use a skill saw or hand saw with the blade set to very, very thin, like just barely cutting through like maybe 1/8 of an inch into the pylon. That's all that was required. But this is just one of the things of inexperience that happens. The next picture you see is the most effective way I found of removing this styrofoam. It's an interesting way they built this coach. I think they put a mold down. They put the inner roof and then they put a mold onto that. And then they injected foam, which formed the pathways and so forth for routing cables in the roof. Of course, this was, I don't think expected to ever be taken apart again. But anyway, to get that styrofoam out of there, I tried scraping it and cutting it, and the best way I found was just with a real light hand drill that had a blade on it. That removed the stuff very effectively. What I did was to just put a mark onto the blade with a piece of tape, and then I could see how far to drill in. Of course, I did find other wires in there, which I also encountered and had a problem with, but anyway, that's the life of doing this type of work, I guess. And what you can see here is the material removed, but this is only the first step of this, because what has to be done now is there's a frame that I had to make in order to support the Skylight. This could not be just bolted onto the roof. That will not work. So I had to make a double frame that matched the seal points on the Skylight, and which is possible to do. It's not, I won't say it's not difficult. It took a lot of calculations and figuring and measuring and so forth. So that was all done, and then the foam had to be further extracted in order to allow these pieces to be inset into the roof, because this all had to be screwed together and then foam inserted behind that in order to hold it in place, and that's what we'll see next year. So what you can see here is just the pieces of the frame loosely laid in there. I used the material from the crate, which was 3/4 inch material. If I had to do this again, I'd use the 3/4 around the inside. On the outside, use 3/4, and on the inside, 1.5, because this thing had to be exact. And when it came time to do the finishing, it would have been better had there been a thicker piece of wood on the inside. But that's hindsight now. So from there, I put together the wiring, and I used what are called SOBI connectors, and these are really very good connectors because they're waterproof. So what you do is to take and insert the two wires into the connector, and it has a beryllium lead base into it, and then you use a heat gun to seal it. It shrinks, forms a heat seal around the wire, and also solders the two wires together. So it forms a very good seal. In another video, when I do some further work, I'll try and remember to take some pictures and put the links for that in there. Well, I'll put the links for that in this video after the third presentation. So this is just another view of the roof from the inside the motorhome looking up. I haven't cut away the extra material in that triangle yet. And here is where the framing is put into place. Of course, you use screws to do this, which you do over and over and over again until the thing matches up correctly. It was quite a job to get this thing to line up exactly where this hole and spacing was supposed to be. But in the end, it did work. So again, another view of the framing. And what is important here is you can see that the Skylight edge fits exactly along the inside of that box, because what has to happen is there's double-sided sealing that goes along the seal strips on the bottom of the Skylight. And then around the outside of the Skylight, you drill holes into the outer edge of this box in order to secure it to the roof. So it forms kind of a wedge, a sandwich in there. And then with the foam that gets injected behind these boards and in the spacing between the boards, it's quite solid. And here's the final look at it here. So in the next presentation, because I don't want this one to be too long, I'll go through and show how the finishing was done, and that in itself is a challenge because you're trying to fit round things into square holes and make the whole thing come out. And plus, there's a bevel going from front or from middle to back, and then there's different widths along the back as versus the front. And I mean, it's all doable. That'll be the next presentation, part 3.